is James Edmund, served in the U.S. Army. I went in 1962. I was discharged in 1968. I spent a little over 5 years in the military and traveled in many different countries.
Good evening. My name is Eugene L. Allenbaugh. When I was young, going through high school, I decided that I would try to further my education in some way other than college. So I joined the Navy.
My name is Henry William Gable, and I was not in the Army. I was in the U.S. Navy. Thank you very much. I was in the military for 1 year, 7 months, and 2 days. They started drawing down people. I was one of those. But I did go to sea in the opposite direction of the Vietnam War. I was 18 years old, and we hunted submarines. The Cold War was on, and we found at least a couple.
My name's Christopher Eric Hewitt. I was regular Army, stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina in the 82nd Airborne Division. I signed up in for the military while I was in high school under the delayed entry program. I was 17, so I needed my parents' consent, which they did.
Hi, I'm Victor Elliott. I served in the U.S. Army. When I joined the Army, I joined as after my freshman year of college, so I was, call it 18 or 19.
Robert Smith, Sergeant First Class, United States Army, 18.
I wasn't in combat. I was in the Army for 32 years, and my name is John Prendergast, 19.
My name is Richard Phelps, and I served in the Army from 1994 until I retired last May in 2019. I was 19 when I joined.
First time I got shot at, I was 19, and I did not like it. And I don't know nobody that really does like to get shot at. But it was a great education.
I remember my first meal in boot camp. The Navy had a history of eating rather strangely in some of the fictional things I'd read. So for breakfast, they served me baked beans and stewed pigs. Now you talk about getting an early strange start, that was it. The rest of boot camp was more or less going, I would assume, to just a military camp or something, studying, doing things like cleaning, keep your own place clean, do your own laundry, learn to live with a group of people who were all in the same thing. Some of the language we had to learn, for instance, stairs became a ladder, doors became a hatch, food became a chow, became chow instead of food. Clock became, rather than going tick-tock, went ding-ding and rang like ship's bells. So you learned a whole new language. I remember writing a paper once, like I said, Pygmalion, the people we went through to learn a new language for that particular branch of the service and humanity.
My first feeling when I went off to service, I was proud to wear a uniform. You know, it's something I thought about as a young person. I had some relatives that were in the Army, so the first time I put a uniform on, I was very proud to put it on. A little scared to be away from home, probably the first time I'd ever been away from home. But after the first year or so, you get used to it, and you know, I served 10 years of active duty. So after that, I was good to go.
I was really excited to serve my country, and I wanted to get the feeling of being away from my parents at such a young age, and I thought that was a great way to start my life and the first step into becoming a man.
I wanted to get away from home. Didn't want to go to college, so the service was my first option. My dad was a Vietnam veteran, so Most of my family's been through the military.
I don't know how I could even answer that. Because all the time I was in and all the places, many of the places I would like to went back to, but none of them what I would want to live in. I think the U.S. is still the greatest country to live in.
A major memory. The vastness of the sky and the sea when you're out in the middle of the ocean, and how rough it can be.
Let's see, so Edinburgh, I was there. All, let's see, Glasgow, you name it, the fancy cities. There was one of them I remember particularly was the County Cork, which was in Ireland. And it is famous for housing the Blarney Stone. Now, they didn't call it the Blarney Stone, they call it the Oracle of Eloquence, because by kissing the stone, you became eloquent. I thought it was rather subtle, I never became eloquent. But it in itself is very interesting. We took a bus from County Cork. You notice they put their language backwards. It wasn't Cork County, it was County Cork. We went up the castle. One part of it was still taking. Now, I don't know if you understand the American Navy's uniform at that time, but it consisted of a pair of pants with one tiny pocket and a jumper with one shirt pocket, just all. So, of course, we carried our change and such things and in the belt and vest as we could. Now, to get to this Blarney Stone, we climbed up seemed like a couple stories. And then there's a parapet with a very huge stone wall on the other side of it. 2 bars along a hole in the floor there that leads out to under that large stone. You grab the bars, you lay down at floor level, you stick out your upper part out under that stone. This is when really the excitement started, when American sailors did this, because they always had their shirt pocket, their jumper pocket full of coins, because a large amount of the Scottish money was coins. They start raining out, and as they rained out of your pocket, the little people down on the ground had a field day running out. Probably earned more money in that one trip that they'd earned in a month, judging by what some of the other people told me. But you did. You got out to hang in the bars, you stuck your head out, and the stone must have been quite powerful because, well, popular, because there was a saucer-like depression smoothed out underneath that rough stone. From there, we headed north, I believe. And remember, I'm trying to put 30 months here. That particular trip, after we left Ireland, and not that particular time, but again, making all of our measurements, we ran upon one particular place where we discovered a deepest part in the Atlantic that we'd seen. So, although it was boring, we crisscrossed that place for a couple of weeks getting the actual depths. It was deep enough that our sonar, which was state of the art at that time, was only plus or minus 1%, and they decided that wasn't accurate enough. We tried to measure it by dropping a rope with a weight on it down. That didn't work because of this rope, but we still consider it was the deepest part in the ocean. From there, we went ahead across the Arctic Circle and watching the well, ran into some icebergs. In fact, literally, our sister ship did run into an iceberg. Kind of swung into it more under props, so they had to go to England again to get it repaired while we kept messing around in the Arctic Circle.
Serving with soldiers, some of the great guys we ever had. Germany, I love Germany.
A major memory that sticks with me to this day was the first time I loaded an AC-130 aircraft in airborne school. That I knew when I loaded it, the only way I was getting out of it is if I parachuted out of it. It was a very surreal feeling, very scary, but I overcome my fear and exited my first aircraft successfully.
Well, it's interesting now, the times that seemed to be the worst now tend to be the best stories, so it's probably the worst times that are now the funniest stories.
Fondest memory, probably some of the guys I served with in Iraq in 07, 08. I still keep in contact with those guys. As bad as it could have been over there, we still had a few fun moments that stick with me.
What major things I learned
Yeah,
in the
that are still useful to you today.
nothing. And that is the truth, because what I've learned, I will never use, or what I was trained for. I would never use it in any civil life.
Even the people who in other branches of the service learn to, well, discipline, I'll put it that way. Not only, you learn to discipline yourself as well, behavior.
No matter how hard some of the things are, like being in a heavy storm and taking 45-degree rolls, is all of it's temporary. You get past it, but you have to keep in mind that this is going to not last but so long, no matter how hard it is.
I learned communications and logistics that I still use to this day.
Leadership.
That's a tough one. Leadership, working with others as a team.
No. Most of them are not around.
Never. I never see anybody I know from the past.
Yes, I do.
I keep in touch. It's very rare when I see somebody. I'm a very private person, so I don't really have social media a lot, and I know that's how a lot of my fellow veterans and fellow friends at Fort Bragg keep in touch, but every so often I do hear from one of them, and we engage in memories that we had and try to talk and keep in touch as often as we can.
With?
No.
Some of them, not many of them live around here. I do still work with veterans at the Army Heritage Center.
These years I keep in contact with a lot of them. You form a bond with your fellow soldiers, especially as you become a leader. You form a greater bond with those folks, and they form a bond with you.
I think it sort of helps me. I look at life in a different way now. I don't know it's because I'm older or because of I was so young when I was in there.
Okay. Well, there's lots more that I saw that didn't get, but it did get to where I am now, quite obviously. First off, it helped me get a basics in electricity and electronics. Second, there was a GI Bill, which didn't pay too much, and by that time I met my wife and got married, and we had some children, so it was tough to get along. But with the GI Bill, I did manage to get some get some college education, not a complete degree, but a college education, which then took me from there, into it as a TV repairman, based on the equipment I'd seen on the Navy and the understanding of the electronics. From there, I left to work briefly in a chemical factory, and I left there and got to work in a place called Norge Division of Borg Warner, which was a manufacturer in our area of ranges, close dryers, close dryer forces, and things of this nature. So I stayed with that because of my background in the Navy, and well, I had made rate, so I had people who I had working for me, more or less. I progressed through the different ranks through that place until that and the things I'd learned in college, climbed the ladder at Norge till I became, well, I don't know how many details you went into.
Oh, absolutely. After I got out of the service, I used the GI Bill to go to college. Ended up working at the Navy Depot as a programmer. It
taught me discipline. The job I have now, I have today, is all due to the military for logistics that I did in there. So that's the same thing I do right now is logistics.
Yes, it did. I'm totally thankful for my experience in the military. Truthfully, made me a lot better person. How can I say? It definitely made me respect people a lot more, but it 100% affected everything after that in my life and helped me to get where I am today with that experience.
Well, most definitely. Teaches you discipline, teaches you leadership, teaches you teamwork, and how to get things done and accomplished, sometimes under very austere conditions.
So right now I'm a GS civilian working here at the Army Heritage Education Center. Part of the reason I'm here is because I did serve, and I'm proud to serve as an Army civilian now. So my Army career greatly helped me transition into an Army civilian job.
Any of the military branches you go into, I think you have to go into it with a very open mind, because it's not really going to be like you expect it to be. That you're going to be doing one thing, and even if you're trained in something and they tell you you're going to be doing it, don't mean you're going to be doing it. You could be doing it in some other field altogether different.
Do it. I was special. I got special duty. I liked it very much.
If you go in, take advantage of all the educational opportunities you have. It's not hard. There's just a lot of rules, and you have to learn how to fit in and adapt to whatever the situation is. Nothing stays static. It's always moving, and you may be moving every 2 to 3 years as well.
The military is a great start to get a trade, to learn something in the military. It teaches you discipline. It teaches you respect. It's something I think every American should think about when they come out of high school.
The advice I can give you is have a never give up attitude no matter how hard things get. People have been there before you, people will be there after you, and if you put your heart and soul into it, you can accomplish anything.
Yeah, you need to look at each of the branches, decide what it is you want the branch, what you want the branch to give you, whether that's training, teaching or fun, which was my case. And then you pick your service according to that. That's my advice. Otherwise, you're liable not to like what you're doing. So pick something that's going to be fun or of interest to you or a skill you want.
If I had to give some advice to folks going in, number one, join the Army, because that was my preferred service. Find a job that you like. I'll be honest with you, recruiters are trying to fill jobs that they need people in, but if there's a job that you want, go for it. Think about after the service what that's going to do for you. So find a career that's going to help you in the long term.
And I would not trade it for anything.
Oh, sure. At the time I went in, if you weren't going to go to college, and not many people did when I graduated, you went into trades. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I went to service to buy myself some time and eventually found direction.
Yes, I would.
Absolutely. I would definitely do it all over. Some days I have a lot of regret for not staying. I wish I could have, but I chose not to. But I look back to this day and honestly still wish I could be serving.
I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Yes. No hesitation with that answer.
Absolutely, I'll do it all over again.
At the time I enlisted, the Korean police action was going on. It was not considered even a war, it was a police action. So it was, well, I was sent to the wrong ocean. I was sent to the Atlantic Ocean, and Korea was in the Pacific.
Well, all the field training we did, it was fun doing all that stuff. We did just hanging with the guys and everything. It's like a big family. Just a bunch of camaraderie, and there's a ton of memories. I mean, it's just I did 32 years in the military, so I have tons of memories of just dealing with people and going to different places, going to different countries.
One story that sticks out in my mind is the will that you learn to have. You would never think you could run 10 miles. You would never think you could road march 20 miles. You would never think you could jump out of an airplane, but the military gives you, I would say, the peace of mind that you can accomplish anything you put your heart and soul into, and you can overcome the fear, and the challenges that you can overcome are incredible.
Funny story, I was an armor officer with tanks. We were in Germany, training area. It had rained for I don't know how many days, but the mud it felt like it was knee deep. It was probably not quite that deep, but it was pretty deep. Anyway, I'd gotten off as the platoon leader to go check my other tanks and see how the crews were doing. And about halfway across the field, my boot got sucked up off my foot as I was trying to pull it out of the clay. So there I'm standing in the wee hours of the morning with my one foot stuck in the mud with the boot on, the other foot is dangling in the air with the sock on, and the boot is in the mud, and I'm attempting to do a ballerina move to get the boot out of the mud before the mud goes into the boot. I failed and ended up having to put my foot down to get the boot out. Just a story.
A lot of fun moments, a lot of jokes played on each other. You know, when you're out training or on deployment, and there's not a lot of entertainment, you have to make your own entertainment. So laughing and joking with others, jokes that nobody else would understand, those stick with you for a long time. Okay, so the picture above me is a 120 millimeter mortar. For the most of my career, this is what I did. I was driver for the mechanized version, and ammo bearer and gunner, and eventually squad leader. during my 9 years in the National Guard, I was actually instructor, so I was teaching this job of mortars to incoming recruits. So for the majority of my career, this is what I dealt with, was the 120 and the other various mortar systems that the Army has.
Thanks for giving me a chance.
POWMIA Accounting Agency website, which was updated this morning, which denotes that there are 81,000 Americans still unaccounted for. 81,000. So when you think about that chair represents 81,000 American families that there's an